There is a phrase that good navigators often use to remain self-aware of the kind of psychological pressures that one encounters when trying to find one's position in the world, one's place, and a grip on what the future might hold. And the phrase goes like this: the truth itself, though valid, may be bent a long, long way before breaking by the gentle pressure of wishing. Meaning that you can take data, honestly derived data that is got a real basis in reality, and through clever mechanisms within your own mind, even those that are often subconscious, those truths can be twisted into things that are so distal, I guess, from the reality that you need them to represent, that they can become misleading at best and ultimately completely useless. So a classic example from seafaring would be something like this. Let's imagine a ship approaching a dangerous shore in poor visibility, and the crew is desperate, wanting to get into safe harbor. Perhaps there's a storm system that's looming. They don't want to be caught out at sea, so there's a time pressure to get into harbor. But you can't see very well, and the navigator is doing their best through glimpses either of the sun perhaps, or a sounding here or there, or the occasional compass bearing off of a point that presents itself through the fog intermittently or something like that. Let's say that the data is spotty. And as one approaches the harbor mouth, one that's potentially fraught with hazards, the navigator gets a data point presented to them. Let's say it's a compass bearing. And it presents a radical disagreement with the dead reckoning, the assumed position of the ship. So there's a conundrum there, there's a crisis. What does the navigator do? Do they immediately respect this one data point and turn the ship around, or do they assume that their assumptions were correct and press on that model in spite of the fact that this new point, this new compass bearing, ostensibly demonstrates that their idea of their position, where they thought the ship was erroneous. In fact, they're not certain of that at all, and they might be in tremendous danger, in fact. What is it that the navigator does in this environment? Well, this is what separates good navigators from bad navigators. Bad navigators have a tendency to want to bend the truth by wishing. So they will try to rationalize the incongruent data point by saying, well, I must have read the compass wrong. Oh, I doubt myself there because I didn't see it very well. Oh, well, it could have been that I was standing too close to the mast and it gave me an erroneous reading. They will try to rationalize the inconsistent data point into their prior model because they desire the prior model to be accurate. A prudent mariner accepts the data point on its face value and he turns the ship around until he has a solution. Either it's known that the model was wrong or the data point was wrong. I'm not going to allow the gentle pressure of wishing to press that truth forward until ultimately it proves to be broken. That's just something you can't do in this business, and it can be a matter of life or death in the navigational arts. Now, of course, this is why, especially when one sees navigational techniques applied through the apprenticeships that one finds traditionally. There's such a focus on becoming extremely cautious about validating one's positions and one's views, because the essential art of navigation is honesty, really. It's the ability to make good observations and understand what those good observations mean about reality in the most honest and forthright of manner. That's the core skill. Understanding that there's a tremendous and often unconscious drive, a compulsion, to see reality in a way that it doesn't present itself, to see the world in a manner that's comfortable, or that confirms one's prejudices, or makes action not necessary rather than necessary. There's a tremendous pressure to always see the world in the manner that you wish it to be. But such a juvenile and, again, narcissistic tendency, this lack of maturity, is not fitting for any of us who would wish to be the navigators of our own lives and to seek lives of freedom, personal freedom, not only in the physical but the metaphysical, right? To be free to navigate worlds both external and internal. We need skills that are beyond that, which are commonly held by the common individual who makes their way through life by subservience and compliance. But how does one go about assessing the reliability or the validity of one's tools of observation? For certain, if we are honest, we understand that we live in this narcissistic culture where practically everyone you meet, in spite that they are patently juvenile, patently self-referential, most all of these individuals seem to believe that they are purveyors of a certain kind of personal truth. How can we be certain that we are not falling victim to the same kind of prejudices? For if we are, again, honest, and we see that other individuals are so absolutely unconscious about their lack of personal integrity, how is it that we would know that we weren't afflicted by the same? So I'm going to offer for you an interesting test, a personal assessment tool that, if made conscious, I believe can go a long way to metaphorically check the validity of one's conceptual instrument, let's say. And it's an interesting one because to even participate in the test, for most people I meet, actually, they lack even the maturity to even attempt the test, for reasons that you will see once you try it. That's fine, no matter. We're investigating this for our own ability to find our own way as the captains of our own fate. For those of us that want to take that on, there is simply no degree of integrity in our measuring tools that is unnecessary. So let's look at this diagnostic and see how it can apply to our own thinking. Certainly none of us are so free that we will not find aspects of our own thinking, of our own relating to the world, that are not still encumbered by the legacy of oppression that we have been subjected to in the past. But having the tool at our disposal can go a long way to shining light on those areas where we are still not free, and to find some liberty there. So here's how you do the diagnostic, and I would encourage a pen and piece of paper for it. What I'm going to do for you is provide a sequence of words, and what I simply want you to do is to write down what immediately comes to mind. So we'll assume for a moment that you are prepared, and we'll try it. Are you ready? So here's my sequence of words, and I simply want you to write down what immediately comes to mind when I say them. Global positioning system. There's no right or wrong answer to any of this. I simply want you to write down what it is that immediately comes to mind when you hear the words global positioning system. And when you're done with that, stop the video for a moment and we will try a second trial, trial number 2. And when you're ready, another set of words. And again, you need to write down immediately what comes to mind. Are you ready? Here's the second set of words. Gender pay gap. What immediately comes to mind to you when you hear the words gender pay gap? Go ahead, write those down. There's no right or wrong to that either. Now, from general semantics, we learn in the general semantics model, or at least it's asserted, that when an individual is presented with information, and in this case this is verbal information, so higher order, but information in general, there are in essence 2 postures by which an individual will relate to that information, one of which is called a semantic reaction, which is a unconscious, compulsive, proto-lingual emotive response, one that is devoid of abstraction and generally devoid of strategy. The other posture is to form an abstraction, a map, a topological analog, something that is designed to understand, comprehend, and relate to. The examples that I have given you here are deliberately chosen. I'm doubtful that very many of you have an emotional reaction that is conditioned into you when you hear the words global positioning system. But I would suggest that most people in our society, male or female, have a preconditioned, and in fact deliberately preconditioned, emotive response designed to create a semantic reaction rather than a thoughtful abstraction. I would say that most of us have an emotional reaction first to the words gender pay gap, where we probably have an abstractive response to the words global positioning system. So let's be clear. If we are individuals who have a state of maturity wherein or by which we contain a great deal of touch points within our model of reality that we have basically no control over, meaning that an externality that simply raises or presents to us a bit of information that then compels subconscious aspects of our being beyond our control to assert emotive responses to stimuli. Well, like we are behaving practically as automatons, where other individuals literally control a control box with buttons on it that can compel our behavior through our emotional states by simply saying magic words to us. Can we understand how unfree an individual who is enslaved by that actually is? Tremendously enslaved. And I have to chuckle a little bit in a moment of dismay, because I'm sure what I just said made a lot of you really angry. But of course, irony aside, as a bit of a practice, being conscious of the difference between forming abstractions and having semantic reactions is fundamental to good thinking and to a sovereign mind. As much as possible, one must operate in a world of honest relationships to reality, relationships that are actionable, and as much as possible, avoid the opposite. Cheers.